Some are calling this week's stock market crash the KAMALA crash. The Dow tumbled more than 1,000 points yesterday. The Nasdaq fell 6.2% after the market opened, and the S&P fell 4.2%.
Others are saying if you care about your paycheck, Trump is your guy. Here's author Jim Cramer on that.
If you're in the stock market, if you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump. If that's what you do.
You do?
Yeah, well, he wants to cut your taxes.
Oh, he wants to cut taxes.
Your taxes.
My taxes got raised enormously, as you know, under the last Trump administration.
I don't know if he wants to cut your president.
No. I'm in a blue state.
Oh, yeah, no, forget you're out.
They want to kill
out.
us.
I tried to reorganize. I tried to go to.
They want to put us out of business.
Pennsylvania.
That's
it's not
what
as
they
easy
want to
as
do to us.
I can become an
They
Italian
already
citizen more easily on Pennsylvania
by getting rid of the salt tax deduction.
So, Robbie, what do you make of that?
Well, look, Kamala is part of the current administration, an administration that is hugely unpopular, massively unpopular, not just because Joe Biden is so old and seemingly so out of it and in cognitive decline, but also let's not forget that the policies have been unpopular and people are very dissatisfied with the Biden and Harris handling of a number of issues, first and foremost the economy and inflation. And now we had this bad economic news yesterday. We're very hopeful that things will not escalate into a recession, but all of the bad economic news is bad news for Harris and good news for Trump because Trump's running against what the current administration has done, and Harris has to own what the shape of the economy is. And people feel like it's not working for them. They remember how things were under Trump prior to COVID very fondly, that things were good. Those times they want to get back to. President Biden promised when he was running a return to normalcy, but that ended up being a return to, the situation, the landscape we have now. And the Trump plan, the Republican plan to right the economy, yes, is less less taxing and less spending. Now, whether we're going to actually ever get less taxing and less spending, we certainly never seem to get less spending. I would like us to get less taxing and spending, and that will stimulate economic growth and end up being good for everyone. I guess the Harris plan, we'll have to hear more about it. The Harris-Walz plan to deal with the reality of these policies that the American people do not like and do not want. But Trump and his campaign are going to be tagging Kamala with what is going on, and if things get even worse, if this does escalate into some kind of recession, that could be the death knell for her campaign because she is, the closest thing to an incumbent in this race.
So Donald Trump appointed the current chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. Jerome Powell, at the beginning of the pandemic, saw the inflation that was happening, which was largely concentrated to the supply side. It was a lot of companies where their employees couldn't show up to work. They had to adjust social distancing. People got sick. They couldn't be there. We weren't as easily able to get products, which are inputs for a lot of businesses from other countries. There were all sorts of reasons for why companies raised prices. Many of them were on the supply side because they incurred additional input costs or saw some projection of revenue losses. Now, Donald Trump's chairman of the Federal Reserve decided to raise interest rates. Why? Because the Fed's explicit plan wanted to make 2 million more people unemployed in the United States. They wanted to raise interest rates so there would be less capital that people could access to invest in businesses and start new ones. Because the interest rate makes the loan payments more expensive, less people are likely to take out loans in a high interest rate environment. So this slows economic growth, which will also slow job growth. That is what we've seen in July. A lot of investors pay very close attention to these jobs reports. And in July, we really saw much lower growth than people were projecting. And this is an indicator to the Fed that their policy is working of raising interest rates to increase unemployment. And so now they're projecting that interest rates are going to go probably back down, and we're going to see this rate hike reversed or rates cut. And so what does that mean? Well, banks are one of the main investors in our economy. Banks are the people who benefit the most when interest rates are high because they're giving the loans to people and earning way more off of that interest paid back than they are in a low interest rate environment. Banks really like when interest rates are high for this reason. They're raking in the dollars. However, if banks are not getting that high interest rate payment anymore, if rates are cut, they have less capital. They're less likely to invest their deposits of money into the stock market, which is what banks do with the money they hold. They invest it, they turn it into more money. So maybe the economy is a little bit bad for investors right now, and they have some future projections that are not so good. But that's tied to policies that started under Trump and from Trump's chairman of the Federal Reserve. And if you care about your paycheck, you might not like Donald Trump. If you're a Wall Street investor or if you're the head of a corporation, Trump's your guy. He's going to cut corporate taxes, but he has tax cuts ending for the middle class and the working class. And the middle and working class had their taxes cut by a lower margin under Trump than he cut for the wealthy elites. So I just don't think that's an honest argument. And calling it the Kamala crash is to ignore all of the context in our economy.
Yeah, Trump should vow to cut middle-class taxes as well. He should cut everybody's taxes. I mean, it's not over who's getting taxed, right? The Democrats want to just keep tax or get taxes even higher on the wealthy, and Republicans want to cut taxes on the wealthy, and they should be talking about cutting taxes for everyone. But the purchasing power of what working people earn money and then what they're able to buy with that money is not going to be helped, in my view, by raising a heavier tax burden on top earners or on corporations, because that does not devolve toward the products that corporations produce being more affordable or less expensive. It also will cause them to lay people off and cause job growth to slow. So I don't think that's the answer, although I absolutely agree that there should be more of a focus on reducing everybody's tax burden and creating an economy where investors want to invest in firms and in business ideas and stimulate and grow the economy and then hire people and build things. And that's what we want to get going. I think it mostly requires leaving the economy well enough alone and not putting thumbs on scales and not having some massive flow of government cash to wreck what the dollar's worth and all of those sorts of things. So, Trump has made his promises to top business people to kind of get them in line with his policies, that he's going to have keep their taxes low, and so they're enthusiastic about him. And if that doesn't seem fair to other people, he should absolutely. There should be pressure. I support pressure on Republicans to reduce everybody's tax burden, especially at the middle income and lower levels as well. I would like to see more pressure on Republicans and Democrats to do that for certain.
Yeah, I think because we're in a position where the top 1% of the country holds more wealth than all of America's middle class, people favor taxes on the wealthy because we've seen them raise prices and cut wages. And in an economy that's more productive than ever before, where profit margins are higher than ever before. The elites in the country are making a lot of money off of the backs of working people. And I think that's why it's not just Democrats. It's 69% of the country that supports a tax on billionaires and a tax on Americans earning over $400,000, which is what they consider to be very wealthy. You can live extremely comfortably off of that money. And I think that it makes a lot of sense to equalize the playing field and stop these people from hoarding wealth while other people can barely afford to pay their bills, but are working over 40 hours a week, sometimes 2 jobs. And so equalizing that playing field is very popular, definitely not just a Democratic issue. And when we look at the stock market, a lot of people should look at that and say, do you want the Republican proposal of having your Social Security being entirely dependent on the stock market? Or do you want what you pay in through your life working in the United States to come back to you? I don't think people want to see their retirement invested entirely in the private sector. I think they want the government to guarantee those dollars that they pay and make it back to them. So I think a lot of people will see this instability and will think critically about the economy. I don't think the Kamala crash framing makes sense when she's the vice president right now. I think people understand the economy is a little bit more complicated than whoever the nominee is the reason that the economy is not doing well.
We'll have more Rising right after this.